Just hours ago, in a move that has left constitutional experts reaching for their reference books and royal watchers genuinely struggling to find historical precedent, King Charles III has made a decision that nobody inside or outside the palace saw coming. Princess Anne, the hardest working, most privately disciplined, most institutionally loyal member of the entire royal family, has been granted an extraordinary new level of royal authority. An authority that goes beyond anything she has held before. An authority that changes the operational reality of this monarchy in ways that are still being fully understood by the people whose job it is to understand such things. And the nation is in shock. If you like and subscribe right now, you will not miss a single development as this story continues to unfold, because the implications of what Charles has just done are going to be felt across this institution for years to come. Before we go any further into exactly what this new authority is, why Charles granted it now, and what it signals about the current and future state of this monarchy, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. What is happening inside the British royal family at this moment represents a genuine shift in how the crown operates, the kind of shift that the mainstream press will cover briefly and incompletely and then move past. The full picture requires exactly the kind of examination we are going to give it right now. You need to be here for all of it. And here is my question for you. After you hear everything I am about to share, do you believe Charles has made a wise and far-sighted decision, one that shores up the institution at a moment of genuine vulnerability by entrusting one of its most proven and most loyal servants with greater responsibility? Or do you think that granting this level of authority to Princess Anne at this particular moment reveals something about the state of Charles's health and the state of this monarchy that the palace has been working very hard to keep from public view? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one, and on a story this significant, I genuinely want to know where you stand. Now let me walk you through everything from the beginning. Because to understand why this decision is as extraordinary as it is, you first need to understand who Princess Anne is. Not the version of her that gets flattened into a headline, but the full, complicated, genuinely remarkable reality of a woman who has spent more than 50 years doing something that almost nobody else in her position has managed to sustain. Princess Anne Elizabeth Alice Louise was born on August 15, 1950. She is the only daughter of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. She is 74 years old, and she has been working genuinely, relentlessly, without interruption, in service of the crown since she was a teenager. The court circular, which is the official daily record of royal engagements maintained by the palace, shows that Princess Anne has topped the list of royal engagements completed by any member of the family in the majority of years over the past 2 decades. In 2023 alone, she completed 457 official engagements. In 2022, the year of the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee and death, she completed over 400. Year after year after year, the same pattern. More engagements than anyone else. Less press coverage than almost anyone else. 0 complaints on record. That last point. Think about that for a moment. Princess Anne has never given an interview complaining about her workload. She has never authorized a documentary exploring her private feelings about the demands placed upon her. She has never, in 50 years of public life, used the platform of her royal position to draw attention to herself in ways that serve her personal narrative rather than the institution she serves. She shows up. She does the work. She goes home. And then she shows up again. That record is the foundation upon which everything that happened this week is built. Because what Charles has granted Anne is not a reward given lightly or sentimentally. It is a decision grounded in exactly the kind of evidence-based assessment of capability and reliability that the most consequential institutional decisions require. And here is where it gets really interesting. The new authority granted to Princess Anne places her formally within the structure of the Councillors of State, but with a critical and unprecedented extension of that role that goes significantly beyond what any Councillor of State has been empowered to do in the modern era of the monarchy. Let me explain what this means, because the mechanics matter, and most of the coverage is glossing over them entirely. Councillors of State are the individuals who are legally empowered to carry out certain royal functions when the sovereign is temporarily unavailable, due to illness, absence from the country, or incapacity. The role is governed by the Regency Acts and has existed in various forms for centuries. In its current form, it allows councillors of state to hold Privy Council meetings, give royal assent to legislation, and conduct certain official functions that would otherwise require the sovereign's direct participation. Until very recently, the designated counselors of state were the spouse of the sovereign and the first four individuals in the line of succession who were over the age of 21. That list currently includes Camilla, William, Harry, Andrew, and Beatrice, a list that became constitutionally awkward when Harry stepped back from royal duties and moved to California, and Andrew was stripped of his public royal role following the catastrophic fallout from the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. Parliament addressed part of this problem in 2022 by passing the Councillors of State Act, which added Anne and Edward to the list of eligible councillors. But what Charles has now done goes beyond what that act established. According to sources with direct knowledge of the palace's internal administrative arrangements, Charles has granted Anne a specific and formally documented delegated authority to act on his behalf in a defined category of institutional decisions that fall outside the narrow statutory functions of a councillor of state, but that require a senior royal presence and a senior royal judgment when Charles himself is not available to provide it. Let that sink in. This is not a ceremonial expansion. This is not a title or an honorific designed to make Anne feel valued. This is a working authority, a practical, operational, day-to-day authority that places Anne in a position of genuine institutional power that she has not previously held, and that no member of the royal family outside the direct line of succession has held in living memory. But it doesn't stop there. Because the specific category of decisions that Anne is now empowered to act upon tells you everything about why Charles chose her specifically, and why he chose to do this now. The authority relates primarily to three areas. First, the management of royal patronages, the network of charitable and institutional relationships through which the Crown maintains its presence in public life across the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. Second, the oversight of certain categories of royal household appointments, the staffing decisions that shape how the palace actually functions on a daily basis. And third, the representation of the Crown at significant national occasions when neither the sovereign nor the Prince of Wales is available to attend. Think about what those three areas have in common. They are all areas where institutional memory matters enormously, where the accumulated knowledge of decades of royal service gives you an understanding of context and consequence that no briefing document can adequately substitute for, where the ability to read a room, to understand what a decision means not just administratively, but symbolically, to know what the institution has always valued, and therefore what it must continue to protect, where all of that lived, embodied, 50-year knowledge base is not a luxury, but an operational necessity. Nobody in the royal family has that knowledge base to the degree that Princess Anne has it. Nobody comes close. Royal author and biographer Brian Hoey, who has spent decades researching and writing about Anne, including in his authoritative biography Princess Anne. A biography has long argued that Anne represents the most underutilized institutional asset the modern monarchy possesses. He has noted repeatedly that her combination of experience, judgment, discretion, and sheer stamina makes her uniquely qualified for exactly the kind of role that Charles has now formally given her. And it doesn't stop there, because the decision to grant this authority now, at this specific moment, is inseparable from the context in which it has been made. And that context requires us to speak plainly about something the palace manages very carefully in its public communications. King Charles III was diagnosed with cancer in February 2024. The palace announced that diagnosis in a brief statement that confirmed the condition was serious enough to require him to step back from public-facing duties during his treatment. He returned to public engagements in April 2024, and since then has carried out his duties with what the palace describes as determination and commitment. But sources who speak to royal correspondents on background, not for attribution, not for the official record, but with the clear intention that the information shapes public understanding, have consistently described the management of Charles's schedule as a careful, ongoing calibration, not a return to full strength, a managed presence, a king who is doing what he can, when he can, with the energy and the capacity that his condition and his treatment allow him. In that context, the decision to formally extend Anne's operational authority is not simply an act of brotherly confidence in a reliable sibling. It is contingency planning. It is the kind of institutional prudence that a responsible sovereign undertakes when he is honest with himself about the realities of his situation. Let that sink in. Royal constitutional expert Professor Robert Hazel, founding director of the Constitution Unit at University College London, and one of the foremost authorities on the legal and constitutional frameworks within which the monarchy operates, has noted in recent commentary that the extension of delegated royal authority in this manner is a significant constitutional moment. Not unprecedented in the broad sweep of royal history, there are examples reaching back centuries of sovereigns making practical arrangements to ensure institutional continuity during periods of reduced capacity, but significant in the modern context. Significant as a signal about how Charles and his advisors are thinking about the months and years ahead. And the choice of Anne specifically, rather than William, rather than Camilla, rather than any other member of the family, tells its own story. William is the heir. He is the Prince of Wales. His role is to be prepared for the moment when the crown passes to him, not to step into the operational functions of the current reign in ways that blur the line between the present and the future. That line matters constitutionally. It matters symbolically. And both William and Charles understand that maintaining it clearly is part of the work of a responsible transition. Camilla is the queen consort. Her role has its own specific character and its own specific demands, and the relationship between Camilla's position and questions of operational authority within the institution is, as we have discussed in recent coverage, a matter of some internal complexity at the current time. Anne has none of those complications. Anne is the king's sister. She has no claim on the throne. She has no agenda beyond the service of the institution she has devoted her life to. She has no personal positioning to manage, no future reign to protect, no narrative to curate. She is, in the most fundamental sense, free to simply do the work. And doing the work without ego and without agenda is what she has done every single day for 50 years. Think about how rare that is. Think about how valuable that is to an institution navigating the kind of pressures this one is navigating right now. But here is where the story opens into something even larger. Because this decision does not exist only in the context of Charles's health and the immediate operational needs of the current reign. It exists in the context of a broader question about the future of the monarchy, a question that this institution is going to have to answer convincingly in the years ahead. What is the House of Windsor for? That question is being asked with increasing directness in Australia, where the Republican movement has found renewed energy in recent years, and where the argument for cutting the constitutional link with the British Crown is being made with more sophistication and more public support than at any point since the 1999 referendum. It is being asked in Canada, where Indigenous communities and multicultural urban populations are increasingly skeptical of the symbolic relevance of a hereditary British monarchy to the lived reality of their country. It is being asked in the United Kingdom itself, where polling consistently shows that younger generations feel less connection to the crown than any previous generation in the modern era. The answer to that question, the only answer that can actually work, the only answer that has ever worked for this institution across the 1,000 years of its complicated and turbulent history, is this. The monarchy endures when the people who embody it are visibly, credibly, undeniably committed to something beyond themselves. When the individuals who carry the crown are seen to be sacrificing personal comfort and personal convenience in service of something larger. When the institution can point to its members and say, look at what these people give. Look at what they do when nobody is watching. Look at the standard they hold themselves to when there is no camera present and no applause to be earned. Princess Anne is the most powerful answer this institution currently has to that question. Royal historian and broadcaster Dr. Anna Whitelock, whose research into the history of royal women and royal power has produced some of the most rigorous scholarship in this field, has argued that the monarchy's greatest resource has always been the quiet, consistent, unglamorous devotion of individuals who understood that the crown is not about the person wearing it, but about what it represents to the people it serves. By that measure, Anne is not simply a useful institutional asset. She is a living embodiment of the principle that makes the monarchy worth defending. Charles knows this, and the decision he has made this week is, among other things, a decision to place that embodiment at the operational center of his reign at the moment when the reign needs it most. Here is the historical comparison that sharpens everything into the clearest possible focus. In 1811, when King George III finally became too ill to carry out his royal functions, the Prince Regent, the future George IV, assumed the practical authority of the crown under the Regency Act. But it was not the Prince Regent who held the institution together during those years. It was the network of loyal, capable, quietly devoted servants of the crown who continued to do the daily work of the monarchy, while the formal drama of the regency played out at the political level. The monarchy survived that period not because of its most prominent figures, but because of its most reliable ones. Charles has just ensured that his most reliable figure is formally empowered to hold things together in whatever way the coming period requires. And the nation, slowly, as the full implications of this decision become clear, is beginning to understand what that means. The response from people who have been following this story since it broke has been immediate and striking. Comments and messages pouring in from across the United Kingdom and the wider Commonwealth. People writing things like, "Finally, someone in that family is being recognized for what they actually do rather than what they say." And, "Anne has earned this 50 times over and everyone knows it." And, "This is Charles showing that he understands what the institution actually needs right now. But there are other voices too, and they deserve to be heard honestly." Some commentators have raised the question, and it is a legitimate question, of whether the granting of this authority to Anne, at this speed and with this degree of formal documentation, represents an acknowledgement of a more serious decline in Charles's operational capacity than the palace's public statements have indicated. That question cannot be answered definitively on the basis of what is currently publicly known. What can be said is that the decision is consistent with a sovereign who is thinking carefully and responsibly about continuity, and that thinking carefully and responsibly about continuity is exactly what a good king should do. Others have noted that the extension of Anne's authority, while operationally sensible, raises questions about democratic accountability. The individuals who hold delegated royal authority are not elected. They are not subject to parliamentary confirmation. And the decisions they make on behalf of the crown, while constitutionally bounded, are not always subject to the same levels of public scrutiny as decisions made through conventional governmental channels. Professor Hazel and others have noted that this is a long-standing feature of how the monarchy operates, but it is one that deserves ongoing public examination, particularly as the scope of delegated authority expands. Those are serious observations. And I think this audience is serious enough to hold them alongside the admiration that Anne's record legitimately deserves. Personally, I think Charles has made exactly the right decision, and I want to be specific about why. It is not simply that Anne is experienced, though she is. It is not simply that she is reliable, though she is. It is that she represents something this institution desperately needs to demonstrate to a skeptical modern audience, that it is capable of recognizing genuine merit and genuine service, and placing genuine capability at the center of how it operates, rather than defaulting always to the hierarchies of birth order and formal title and the management of public image. Anne has earned this, in the most literal, documented, undeniable sense of the word earned. And Charles placing her at the operational center of his reign is an act of institutional honesty that I think deserves recognition. But that is just my perspective, and I could be wrong, which is precisely why I want to hear from you. Here are my questions for the comments, and I want specific, thoughtful answers if you are willing to give them. First, do you think the timing of this decision tells us something important about the true state of Charles's health that the palace has not been fully transparent about? And if so, does that concern you, not just for Charles personally, but for the institution and for the public's right to understand the condition of its sovereign? Second, of all the members of the royal family who could have been granted this kind of expanded authority, do you believe Anne was the right choice? Or is there someone else, William, perhaps, or even Catherine, whose involvement at this level would have sent a more powerful signal about the direction this monarchy is heading? And third, when you think about Princess Anne's 50 years of service, the 457 engagements in a single year, the discipline and the discretion and the absolute refusal to make herself the story, what does that record say to you about what real royal duty actually looks like? And does the rest of the family, in your honest view, measure up to it? Drop your answers below. Every single one gets read. And on a story this rich with institutional significance and human complexity, I know this community will have a great deal worth saying. And if you have not already subscribed, please do so right now and turn on your notifications, because this story is absolutely far from over. There will be further reporting on the specific scope of Anne's new authority and how it will function in practice. There are constitutional questions being raised in academic and legal circles that will develop over the coming weeks, and the broader question of how this monarchy manages the transition from the current reign to the next, with all the human complexity and institutional stakes that transition involves, is a story we will be following in depth and in detail as it unfolds. You do not want to be finding out about this after the fact. If this video gave you something genuine to think about, share it with someone who cares about the British monarchy, about the extraordinary demands of royal service, and about what it looks like when an institution finally gives proper recognition to the person who has deserved it longest. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.